This conference will now be recorded.
Wendy Hess.
Wendy Hess, present, representing communications.
Travis Solom.
Present, communications.
Mindy Benson.
Mindy Benson, present, representing Emergency Management Association.
Michelle Bischoff.
Present, representing Iowa Professional Fire Chiefs.
Curtis Lowton.
Present, representing volunteer fire departments.
David Ness. Dan Fank. Jeff Vanderwater.
Present, sheriffs.
Anna Voss.
Present, representing the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy.
Cindy Hike.
Present, representing Iowa Health and Human Services.
Daniel Brown.
Present, representing Department of Transportation.
Michael Strausser. Keith Hove.
Present, Department of Public Safety.
Patrick Updike. I saw Patrick on. Patrick, are you on? Blake DeRushi. And Jessica Sherbuck. And we do have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Vote and motions, will someone second?
Solon.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
He couldn't hear us.
Aye.
Aye.
He can now.
Okay, very good. So the agenda has been approved as amended. Approval of the minutes from the April 11th, 2024 meeting. A motion?
Solon moves. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That brings us to the SWIC report. SWIC Nichols.
Thank you, Chair Bischoff. I will just quickly note that the severe weather that devastated Southwest Iowa proves the resiliency of the system. The Shelby Tower in Harlan took a direct hit from a tornado. The system administrators will give you some more information on that later in this meeting, so I won't talk too much about it, but it's important to note that the communications withstood that. Next week, I am headed to CIS's Cyber Resilient 911 Symposium for information on cyber attacks and preparedness, which is really important in today's age, so I'm excited for that. I am attending with some other Iowa people, including Blake and his team. And before our next meeting, I will also attend NICSWIC the first week in June. I'll have an opportunity to share what we have been accomplishing here in Iowa in regards to interoperability, and then also bring back some emerging technologies and best practices from across the nation. I'm really looking forward to that trip. The REM CDP grant work continues. We plan to bring the Working Medical Talk Group standard documents again to the Operations Committee's June meeting. That's June 5th, I believe. And that document is near the final stages. Many meetings and site visits have occurred across Region 1 for this project. We continue to meet on a weekly basis, and we continue to meet with stakeholders in hospitals and EMS settings to explain the project and garner feedback and answer questions. If you'd like more information on that, please attend the RIC 1 committee, where that project is a standing agenda item, or feel free to reach out to me anytime. There's also a link on our website specific to the grant. In conjunction with that project and the ORAP project that has been ongoing in Carroll County for over a year, the Regional Communications Enhancement Support Project has begun, or RCES. I don't know what we're going to call that. Recess, I don't know. Another acronym, imagine that. So this is Strategic Communication Migration Plan. So as we develop the REM CDP and work on policy and procedures, we will update the State of Iowa Emergency Medical Services Communication Plan. So more to come as that TA gets underway. Just wanted you to be aware of that process. And the COMEX is upcoming in Story County, and I think we'll hear or talk more about that during the training committee report. That's all I have. If there are any questions for me.
Are there any questions for SWIC? Great, thank you, Haley. That brings us to the 911 counselor report. Program Manager DeRushi is unable to be with us, but has submitted a report that SWIC Nichols will share.
I will read that for him. He has 5 bullet points here for me to read. The quarterly program financials were presented and are available on the HSEMD website for those who may be interested. The boards and commissions bill did pass. However, the final version did not eliminate the 911 council, so the meetings will continue into the foreseeable future. The school safety bill did pass. However, it did not take any funding from 911. It does task HSEMD with a handful of things, but as far as 911 funding goes, the final bill has no impact. They worked with CISA to produce a swatting poster that can be hung in PSAPs as a quick reference guide and for important contacts. It is available for download and online, 911 shared collaborative space, or by contacting Blake directly. And finally, now that the legislative session is over, he will be working on proposals for funding with an eye towards the next legislative session. And that's all he provided to me. Thank you.
Great. Are there any questions that we can relay to Program Manager DeRushi? Thank you. User Group Committee, Chair Hess.
Good morning. The user group met on April 18th. It was a pretty short meeting. We reviewed the applications that you will see later on the agenda, and there were no other discussion items. That's all I have.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any questions for the user group? Great, thank you, Wendy. Finance Committee, Chair Brown.
Thank you, Chair Bischoff. The finance team met Tuesday, the 7th of May, and reviewed our financials. was a three pay period month, and we had one extra office expense, which is a membership to a telecommunications group. Otherwise, it was pretty standard number. With that, I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions for the Finance Committee? Hearing none. Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Governance Committee, I believe Chair Ness is unable to attend. What do you have?
I don't see him on.
Okay, he was very questionable. He was double booked.
We do have just one thing to report for the board. Per policy 2023-02.G, we would like to share for the board that there has been a non-substantial change made to Talk Group 3.2.0. It's named Talk Group and Multi-Group names. Holly, do you have that available to pull up quickly? There were just a few grammatical type of changes to bring it up to the language changes that we are moving forward with the changes that we're making across the board on standards. And you'll see that as instead of section, we've named it standards. But as we move down to the final section, we've taken this sentence that just up a tiny bit, Holly, where there's a one sentence deleted. Bottom of the previous page. Yeah, bottom of the previous page, just a tiny bit up. A little bit more, we see a lot of red. It's an entire sentence taken out. Now, it's considered a non-substantial change for the group, but we wanted to make you aware because it does take an entire sentence out, and it says shared inoperable talk groups will be restricted to a maximum of 8 characters, and the formatting of the name will match exactly to the programming guide document. Now, that's taken out because as the sub-regional talk groups were added, they are now 10 characters. And so because of the way that the practice and operational practice of the ISICS layout has changed, that sentence of the standard is now defunct. So we're just taking that out. And so we're moving it forward as the operational practice has changed. So we wanted to make the board aware, and now this will be version 2 of the standard, and it will be posted on the website after today. And because of the way that the policy 2023-02.G is written, there's no need for board action within the police.
Are there any questions for governance? Great, thank you for that update.
Thank you.
That brings us to the Operations Committee. That keeps us with the SWIC.
Okay, so operations had 1.5.1 out for public comment. That period ended last month sometime, and it was combining the travel and transport standards. So 1.5.1 version 2 is available. Do you have that one pulled up? It's been out for a number of days, a 30-day comment period. I think everyone on the board has had a chance, all the committees have had a chance to see it. So I would ask if there is any questions on that standard, and I believe it's under new business for later today. Any questions for me on anything on that standard? Okay, that's all we have from operations. Unless there's anything else here.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Any questions for operations? Thank you for that report.
Yes, thank you.
That brings us to Training and Outreach Committee. Chair Solemn.
All right, we had a pretty lengthy meeting actually, and we're working on several white papers to be uploaded on PTT LMR settings, radio affiliation and scanning, as well as patching. We've made the initial changes, and We're going to put those out for others in other committees and stuff to look at to make sure we've got the verbiage and it's everything correct. And that's all I've got at this point. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to review those, but.
I just have I haven't had any comments back on those white papers. The only other comments I have for training is that 2.11 was also out for a 30-day comment period. We didn't receive any comments back on those. It will be under new business for today also. And then an update on the COMEX scheduled in Story County in Nevada for June 18th, 19th, and 20th. 18th is a setup day, 19th and 20th are exercise day. The roster has some room for ComT and ComL individuals who are interested in completing their position task books. And also, there are some positions for SimCell volunteers as we're finalizing the schedules this week. So if there's any interest, I would like to hear from you very soon. The SimCell volunteers could be a fun opportunity for anyone, maybe from dispatch, who doesn't get the opportunity to get out of the center and maybe yet doesn't have those ComU courses but would be interested in learning about those. They operate a portable radio and read from a script. That's all you have to know how to do. So if you have someone you know who might be willing to volunteer their time for the day, have them reach out to me. And that's all I have.
Great. Are there any questions for the Training and Outreach Committee? Great. Thank you, Travis. That brings us to the Technology Committee. Chair Updike. Has Patrick joined us? When you called roll, I don't know that he was on.
He was having some technical issues, he said. So, Patrick, can you hear us?
He is sending you messages. Sending messages through the chat. He did state that he can hear you on chat.
Okay.
Can you look at the chat and see what?
He just said he had technical issues. Hopefully we can hear him now. He can hear us.
Okay, so I can move forward. Yeah, so we had a really good technology committee 2 meetings where we talked about the BDA, bidirectional amplifier standard that we're working on through operations and technology. And with the help of Rob Denner, we're able to get John Foley from the Safer Building Coalition to attend our last meeting. He provided valuable information toward our BDA policy. He's offered to take a closer look at that and get back to us. He also provided some web links that will help us along the way as we develop this standard. I will ask that Patrick send those links out to the full board. It included a 1-hour webinar that I watched that was very informational, especially in the beginning, and got technical toward the end. John has also put Iowa on the list for a 2025 visit to include either an MTUG meeting or something where we can get him to come where he could have a wider audience. So that was a very helpful meeting, and that amplifier standard is on technology's radar. That's what they're working on right now.
Patrick, was that you that joined? We're still unable to hear you, Patrick, if that was you.
Hold on. He's on his cell, but he can't be heard, right?
All right.
We realize that.
Are there any questions about the technology report as Nichols reported regarding the bidirectional amplifiers? Really more information to come on that topic. Okay, thank you. That brings us to the FirstNet Broadband Subcommittee. Chair Benson.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. We will be meeting next week on Tuesday. At this point in time, I don't have any actionable items to let the group know about, but hopefully our FirstNet committee members, our FirstNet users, will be on the agenda a little bit later on, and they can brief out on the FirstNet reports for the board. Any questions?
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for the FirstNet Broadband Subcommittee? Thanks, Mindy. That brings us to other reports and information sharing among board members. Does anyone have anything that they would like to share? I have a few items. I would like to thank Bridget Edson and Rhonda Broaddus for their service to the board. Both of these individuals, their terms have expired and they've opted not to renew with the board, which leads right into the next item. That Senate File 2385 did pass both the Senate and the House and has been sent to the governor as of May 3rd. That is the restructuring bill that takes the board from 19 to 7 members. We are continuing to work on that transition plan. And as more details become solidified, information will be shared as I've been doing along the way. What is known is that all board members will need to chair a committee, and we await governor approval for those applications that have been received through Talent Bank to fill vacant positions. The other aspect that we know is that all state department seats have been eliminated from the board. So that's what we know. Who's going to occupy all of the 7 seats is a little bit up in the air. On a few positions, we have received applications. They are being reviewed and being sent to the governor for final approval. That hasn't happened yet. So as soon as we know who's approved for the seats, we'll let everyone know. One piece that we are being very cognizant of when we're filling these 7 seats is that though the legislation doesn't mandate it, we are trying to be very purposeful in ensuring that all regions of the state have representation on the board. We felt that that was important to the interoperability landscape of Iowa, that all areas of Iowa be represented, because environments differ across the state. So we wanted to ensure that there was a diversity in what the individuals, where the individuals were from that are on the board. That's what we know at this point. Are there any questions? All right. Does anyone else? Not sure what that means. That brings us to our ISICSB System Administrator report. I presume that's you, Scott?
It is, yes.
Fantastic.
Always got a slide deck. My update will be a little more lengthy today. I've got a short slide deck for you. I'm not a PowerPoint whiz, so it's going to be pretty basic. But it's not big. No, but it's for the previous month. So I wanted to show you guys some recent storm damage that we had at one of our tower sites. Go ahead, next slide, Holly. Go ahead, yep, next. So this is a wider shot showing some relationship to our Shelby Tower site versus some destroyed farm buildings that are across the street. Next slide, Holly. And those are the buildings directly across from our tower site. You can see the extent of damage to those buildings. I'd say they were probably 100, 200 yards away, something like that. It's likely the tower took a direct hit. If not, it was certainly hit by flying debris, as you'll see in some of the upcoming photos. Next slide, Holly. There's one dish that has a missing radome cover. You can see in contrast to the one above it, that cover is completely gone. Next slide. Here's a broken radome cover. That's the west-facing dish towards Monona. That thing was broken in half, and half is missing. And next slide. Here's a dish that was actually destroyed. Whether it was hit by debris or the tornado itself caused that, that's going to have to be replaced. Motorola right now is working on sourcing parts. We'll have estimates on the storm damage in the future. And next slide. And then there's a summary of the damage that tower took. You can go ahead and go to the next one as well. Yeah, next one. And notes, the Shelby site I was watching the operation of the site during the event. The site stayed operational, both microwave-wise, linking it to other towers, as well as RF, and it stayed up the entire time. The site did lose AC power for 2 to 3 days, and when I went out and took these pictures the following Monday, Mid-American had shown up and got the power restored. Generator did its job. It had run that whole time. So with that much of a close call or direct hit with the tornado, we did not lose communication with that site. Other notes there I've got in the bottom. We've got some other maintenance issues. Yesterday I was down in Albia. We had a small amount of copper ground wire that was stolen from that site. This probably makes at least the third site that it has been hit, and it's a real shame because the amount of copper they're getting is not worth the hassle that it's given us. It's kind of unfortunate. And then the Beaverdale site is having some recheck issues reported by field units. Moto has been looking into that over the last week or two. You guys may have seen the maintenance notifications I've been sending out. They're actually there today doing a full PM, and we hope to have some answers following that. Go ahead and next slide, Holly. Here's our April numbers. You see our radios are up 125 from the previous month. Talk groups are up 34, and our push-to-talks for last month was up close to 78,000. And then there's the time, both in seconds, minutes, and hours. And then next slide, Holly. And being I've got some graphics to show you here. There's our radio count trend over the last 3 years, from April 21 till April 24. And you can see how the radios are continually stepping up. We've moved from 22,000 to 37,000 across those 3 years. And next slide. Here's our talk group trend over the last 3 years. And next to the last slide, Holly. This should be our push to talks, and those obviously vary from month to month. And I don't know why we had that big spike there in December or January of 24, but that one spiked for that month. And then, yeah, it could have been snowstorms, that kind of stuff, but yeah, that one really jumped up. And then the final slide we've got, it kind of shows our increase in percentage, both radios and talk groups. Over 3 years, our radios have increased 63% and talk groups by 33%. And with that concludes my update, and I'll take any questions.
Great, thank you so much. I think thank you for providing those pictures. That really tells the story of the resiliency of the system that has been built.
Yes.
That it can withstand all of that damage, communications still happen, and operations can go on as normal, even in the midst of a disaster. Are there any questions for the system administrator and Scott? Great, thank you. FirstNet Authority, Mr. Lampy.
The authority is working on a FRIM, what we call the First Responder Impact Model for the country, and that it's all part of our coverage enhancement for filling in the gaps from where you were from here to 5 years ago, where you are today. We know there's gaps. We have data that shows where those are. So in the next probably this summer, we'll be setting up meetings. One of them will be in Region 7, and specifically with Iowa, I'll ask for some meetings. We'll send the invitations out. But what we're looking for is we're going to show you what we have for coverage, what we see as gaps, and then we need your input as to if that matches what we have. And then hopefully come to an agreement on where those investment funds will be spent, specifically in Iowa, if there is any that we need to spend, some serious coverage gaps. We look at data from crowdsourcing, we look at data from your CAD systems, your calls for service, all of that plays into where coverage is needed. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to get coverage everywhere you want it. We can't put a site every quarter mile in the state. That just doesn't make any sense. But we do look at things like that. So what we'll do is we'll sit in a room like this. We'll show what we have. We'll compare to what Iowa has, and you can advise the authority what you think that model looks like and where it needs to be improved. And it all has to do with the reinvestment funds that we have, those billions of dollars that we're putting back into the network. So that's what it'll happen in my region, Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska, and Missouri. But so it'll be a busy summer for me. But I'll get in touch. The authority will send out invitations for meetings, and we'll let you know.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Tom and the authority? That brings us to AT&T. Is Tyler Richard on? Or Bart? All right, moving on. That brings us to Chris Myers and his CISA report.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bischoff. Appreciate the time today, and good morning to the board. I'll make sure the slides are up, and we'll get rolling from there. So it has been a busy month in the world of CISA and everything associated with cybersecurity for specific communication systems. I'm going to start off today on slide 2 with an update on a cybersecurity advisory that was released back in mid to late April. And this one discusses the Akira ransomware group. This cybersecurity advisory was released by CISA, the FBI, Europol's European Cybercrime Center, and the Netherlands National Security Cyber Center. This is basically discussing everything about the Akira ransomware, which has been very prolific and relatively long-lived as well. The unique thing about Akira is that it's affected a wide range of businesses, infrastructure providers and networks, and government agencies, and communications networks, even emergency communications networks, have been affected by this group. This type of ransomware specifically looks at VPNs and targets those VPNs through what's called a password spraying attack. Basically, it is shooting as many passwords as a computer system can possibly generate at the VPN portal to try to get logged in. And in some cases, it is successful. This cybersecurity advisory talks about those types of things that it does, along with the tactics it uses for defense evasion. So if it does get access to a system, it tries to not be noticed. As a part of this CSA, we try to make sure that there's known methodologies to mitigate this, which include remediating known exploited vulnerabilities. So basically, if you have a VPN on your system, this is something you should be looking at very closely. One of the things you can use to mitigate the potential attack vectors is to enable multi-factor authentication. In many cases, when Akira has gained access to a system, it is because multi-factor was not enabled. So enabling multi-factor authentication will help prevent this. There have been numerous instances of other systems out there that have been the subject of an attempted attack by Akira, but because of various things that were in place, such as multi-factor, even though there were thousands of attacks per hour, they were able to not gain or prevent access to that system, which is ultimately a good outcome. As a part of that, also it encourages agencies to regularly patch and update software and applications to their latest version, and also conduct regular vulnerability assessments. Just because you're secure today and you understand your posture currently doesn't mean you're going to be secure tomorrow. I think that's a very important thing to mention with this, because in speaking with some stakeholders during the Akira attack on some Region 7 agencies, they realized that some settings had been changed and they did not have multi-factor enabled in various parts of their system, and they went and enabled it right away to try to prevent an attack. So this is available at the TLP clear level, which means it can be shared broadly. If you have not seen this yet, please let me know and I will get you a copy of it. It is also available on the CISA website. On the next slide, we're going to talk and move into something that has kind of been around for a while with respect to spear phishing, which is basically specialized emails going out to people to try to get them to do something. It's a part of social engineering. The difference with this one is that the North Koreans are working on an effort that has been a little bit unique in how they will be able to spoof domains on email subject lines to look like they are the agency sending the email. This CSA that discusses this was released by the FBI, State Department, and the NSA, so it just kind of gives you an idea on how broad this is with the North Koreans. The issue here is that once someone learns how to do something, you cannot force them to unlearn it. So if the North Korean government is facilitating the ability for these types of spear phishing attacks to take place, it's likely that others will soon mimic this and do something similar. Where this comes into play is that it could be something like your agency receiving an invoice from someone that appears to be a vendor that you know you have a bill coming from, and someone in your agency pays that bill. In some cases, it could be a significant amount of money, but it's actually going to the threat actor in this case. It could also be someone mimicking your sheriff's office or your fire department and reaching out to stakeholders at some point and tricking them into doing something. There are some red flag indicators that are included in the cybersecurity advisory that are somewhat old in nature but still relevant today. As a part of this, many agencies have reported getting documents from this group that had macros embedded inside of them. There's been a long-standing piece of advice that says that you should not enable macros in Word and Microsoft Office documents, and that still carries through today. There's some weird instances of odd English in emails as well, as if they were trying to do a basic translation and it didn't work very well. And then, of course, follow-up emails 2 to 3 days after the initial contact. So someone may have received this email up front, dismissed it as a scam, and then the threat actor will follow up with them a couple of days later as a means to try to build confidence that what they just received is actually legitimate. So be on the lookout for this type of activity. It is becoming more prolific and more common out there. And again, like I said before, once someone learns how to do something and spoof this type of attack, it is impossible to get them to unlearn it. And it's also very common for other people to mimic it. The final alert today discusses something that is called directory traversal. This type of attack or vulnerability has been out there for quite some time, and on the next slide it will kind of talk about this one particular advisory. This was released by CISA and the FBI, and metaphorically this is similar to someone walking into your building, seeing that the door to the rest of the facility is locked, but then noticing a stairwell on the side, getting into that stairwell, and then having full access to the rest of the building. In a nutshell, that's what directory traversal is. And what this allows the threat actor to gain access to is sensitive information. It allows them to manipulate file systems, system parameters, things like that as a means to either engage in information gathering or some sort of sabotage. So as a part of the Secure by Design initiative within CISA, the goal of this is to bring awareness to this vulnerability that spans nearly all software platforms and nearly all hardware operating platforms as well. So this is a relatively short read, but it does talk about some things that are out there that everybody as system owners may need to have an idea of, because directory traversal can lead to attacks from a multitude of threat actors that are out there. So having awareness that this exists is important. Finally, on the next slide, regional news of note. I do want to point out that the Cyber Resilience 91 Symposium is next week in Kansas City. I'll be in attendance along with Haley for that. We do have a FIFA World Cup cities planning meeting coming up on May 14th to the 15th in Dallas, Texas. For Region 7, Kansas City is a host city as well. Communications exercises. In addition to the Iowa ComEx that's coming up in June, the Kansas ComEx is taking place in Wichita on June 11th. And then the big Central States ComEx is coming up in mid-September, and that will take place in the Joplin and Quapaw area. The Kansas SIAC meeting was also today. That took place virtually and also in Salina, Kansas. And then emails for the interoperability markers updates will go out in July. So I'm keeping that on everybody's radar. Be on the lookout for those types of emails or perhaps some requests for additional information from headquarters on that. That is my report for the day. Chair Bischoff, I can go ahead and take any questions.
Great, thank you, Chris, I appreciate it. Are there any questions for Chris Myers and CISA?
Great, thank you all. Patrick has been able to work out his technical difficulties. Does anyone mind if we go back to hear the rest of technology's report? Is that all right with everyone? See no objections, so floor is yours, Patrick.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, yes.
Well, for today's technology report, we're going to discuss how to correct a muting problem when you're on a conference call. Simply press *6. Anyways, the technology committee met on April 25th and May 7th, and we have kind of tabled standard 3.11.0 for right now, because we started looking at I guess you would call it proposed standard 2.4.1, which looks at bidirectional amplifiers. And so if you're not familiar with bidirectional amplifiers based on this documentation that we're looking at, you've got Class A and Class B. Class A is a channelized type bidirectional amplifier, where Class B is basically wideband. It operates within a whole spectrum of frequencies. And of course, FCC Rule 90.219 lays that all out. So if you do look at 90.219, I have it on my screen, but it tells you all of the rules and regulations that come with bidirectional amplifiers, and basically no one's exempt from it. Class B amplifiers have to be registered with the FCC because they're wideband type operations. The other rule that comes with that is that those bidirectional amplifiers you have to have some sort of written agreement documented that says that the person who has that bidirectional amplifier has permission from the licensee to run that equipment, whether it's required to be registered with the FCC or not. So if you read that FCC rule, it gives you the information that you need. So as a part of the discussions, the discussions on April 25th, Rob Dennard had suggested that we contact John Foley with the Safer Buildings Coalition. So I reached out to him, and within that 24 hours, I had him invited to our May 7th meeting, and he did show up for that. And it was pretty much a question and answer session for bidirectional amplifiers, and we learned a lot. If you look at the standard that's been drafted so far, there's a lot of things that are kind of already there that are part of this Safer Buildings Coalition. And so one of the things that we're looking at developing within this standard are, and these are suggestions from John Foley in our discussions with him, come up with a user agreement to operate those amplifiers, either Class A or Class B, so that you have some idea of where they exist within the state. And develop a provisional agreement to test those devices prior to deployment, which means, okay, if I'm going to set up a bidirectional amplifier, I really should be doing some testing and making sure that it's set up appropriately before you just put it out there and let it run, which I think is a good idea. Test the stuff before you deploy it. Come up with an agreement to use those devices after deployment. Make it renewable, that agreement, over time to keep it operating. Develop periodic testing of BDAs, whether that be every 6 months, 12 months, whatever that may be, since situations change over time. You know, you may have a tower that goes away at some point, and that's the tower that you are potentially using with the BDA. So do periodic testing to make sure that it's still doing the things that it should be doing. Possibly develop some testing procedures for periodic testing, and make that fall in line with whatever testing that is. And then, of course, there's all of the fire codes that exist out there. I don't want to speak to the fire code completely because that's out of my wheelhouse, but the fire codes look like they could or do potentially dictate how these bidirectional amplifiers are put into the buildings and who is responsible for the cost of that. That'll be a topic of discussion, I'm sure. So and I heard Haley's report there. We have John Foley looking at coming back in 2025. I hope I say that right. And I would say that be aware of potential FCC rule changes, proposals coming down the line as it dictates BDAs. So it's a big lift. I think that there's a lot of people that are going to have to be involved. It's not going to be just the technology. I think you're going to see more and more people outside of this group that are going to have to be involved with this just because the fire codes say so much about how they're supposed to operate and what they're supposed to do. So I know that was a little bit long-winded, but wanted to get in there and at least give you some more information.
Great, thank you, Patrick, appreciate it. Are there any questions for Patrick and the Technology Committee regarding DBAs? Thank you.
Thanks for letting me do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That brings us back to item 15, old business, of which we have none. Item 16, new business. New ISICS user approval. Chair Hess.
Good morning. We have 3 applications in front of us for approval today. All are level 2 users. Louisa County, the Moulton, Iowa Fire Department, and the Pocahontas County Sheriff's Office. So I will make a motion to approve those 3 applications.
Hey, we have a motion and we need a second.
Second.
We have a second? And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item B, adopt ISICS Standard 1.5.1 version 2, transport interoperability. Dr. Nichols, do you have anything additional to say about this?
It's been out for public comment. It is really the combination of 2 standards, travel and transport, so it should be named transport and travel interoperability.
Excellent. Are there any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
A motion.
Second. Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 16C, adopt ISICS Standard 2.11.0, training ISICS end users. Chair Swallow.
This is the same as the one that went out for the public comment. It's been out, I think we went over it at the last meeting. And I've got nothing more to add unless Haley does.
No comments were received. It's version 2.
Would you like to make the motion?
I would like to make the motion to adopt the new standards.
Excellent. I need a second.
Second.
Great. Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That brings us to public comments. Are there any members of the public that would like to address the board? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Motion carries. We sit adjourned. Thank you very much, all.